In this video, I shall explain the assessment criteria and the examples of suitable evidence which you can submit to demonstrate your competence against each assessment criterion. The Unit 2 is Develop and Implement the Health and Safety Policy. In this unit, there are 5 learning outcomes. The first 3 learning outcomes include the assessment criteria which shall measure your skill, while the fourth learning outcome includes the assessment criteria which are designed to measure your knowledge and understanding. The last learning outcomes relate to CPD. For all skill-based assessment criteria, you will need to submit documentary evidence from your workplace and provide a brief narrative of the evidence. That is your role in the subject activity for which you submitted the evidence. The documentary evidence of your competence can be the documents, records, pictures, or videos, etc. Remember that your submitted evidence must be valid, reliable, current, authentic, and sufficient. Remember the word VACSR: valid, authentic, current, sufficient, and reliable. For knowledge-based assessment criteria, you shall need to submit a written response in your own words. Your response must be between 250 to 350 words against each assessment criterion. There are 5 assessment criterion in the first learning outcome. We shall discuss each assessment criterion in detail, so you should know what each assessment criterion means and how you can demonstrate your competence against each. The first assessment criterion is analyze the structure of the organization relative to health and safety. To demonstrate your competence against this assessment criterion, you have to submit evidence that how the safety management system works in your organization, that is, who is responsible for OHS processes, for example, policy formulation, risk assessments and control strategies, root cause identification and corrective actions, emergency evacuation, inspections and audits, supplier management, procurement and management review, etc. In the next slides, I shall discuss what can be the suitable evidence to meet the requirements of this criterion. To demonstrate your competence, you can submit the organogram for OHS functions or department, which shows the hierarchy of various roles and their line of reporting. Organogram of your organization in which the OHS function is shown, the process flow diagram of your OHS function, job descriptions of key personnel related to the OHS management system. For example, who develops the procedures, who authorizes them, who carries out risk assessments, who carries out performance evaluation, who carries out reviews, etc. Organizational procedures for various OHS processes which specify how OHS function work in your organization. I am sure you will be able to provide the records of some of above mentioned activities. If, however, you think you cannot provide the records of any of the above, discuss with your assessors from Paradigm Qualifications, who will advise you what can be a suitable evidence keeping in view the context of your organization. 1.2 is advocate the health and safety policy to all key stakeholders in the organization. To demonstrate your competence against this assessment criterion, you have to submit evidence that you communicate the OHS policy to various stakeholders in your organization to ensure they understand their role in achieving the OHS policy goals. Let's see what can be the suitable evidence to demonstrate your competence for this assessment criterion. You can present the minutes of the meetings in which you have communicated the importance of health and safety policy to the audience, records of letters, emails or any other communications in which you emphasize the significance of health and safety policy, evidence that you have prominently displayed your OHS policy in your workplace, for example, a picture, evidence that you conducted training session and toolbox talk in which you emphasized the need to comply with the health and safety policy requirements, evidence that you conducted any weekly or monthly OHS meetings in which health and safety policy and its goals were discussed, minutes of the management review meetings showing your input regarding your briefing to the audience about health and safety policy and its goals. If you think you cannot provide any of the above mentioned records, then just discuss with assessors from the Paradigm Qualification, who will advise you what can be the suitable evidence in context of your own organization. 1.3 Assess the existing health and safety systems, policies and procedures in the organization. To demonstrate your competence against this criterion, you have to submit evidence that you assess the adequacy of the existing OHS management system and its processes, including policies and procedures. By adequacy means that your policies and procedures are effective and efficient and are serving their intended function for which they have been designed. The intended functions of any OHS management system and its policies and procedures is to improve health and safety performance, improve business performance, and improve regulatory compliance performance. In the next slides, let's see what can be the suitable evidence for this assessment criterion. To demonstrate your competence, you can submit inspection plans and results of the inspections to measure the effectiveness of various procedures, for example, risk assessment procedure, emergency evacuation procedures, training procedure, induction procedure, or health and safety policy, etc. Internal, external, or regulatory audit reports in which you have worked as the auditee representative or performed an internal audit. Corrective actions you either have proposed against the non-conformities or non-compliances or reviewed the corrective actions proposed by others. You established the inspection and audit objectives of your health and safety management system or its processes. You established audit program for your organization. Minutes of the OHS management system review meeting in which you were in attendance and show your contribution regarding improvement proposals. If you are unable to present any of the above mentioned records, just discuss with your assessor from Paradigm Qualifications who will advise you what can be the suitable evidence in your own organizational context. The fourth assessment criterion is evaluate the statutory and workplace health and safety requirements relating to input of products and services, the conversion processes, output of product and services, inadvertent, unwanted or unnecessary goods, materials and waste of all types, employees, contractors and other affected by the organizational activities. To demonstrate your competence against this assessment criterion, you have to submit evidence of legal requirement that applied to your organization, keeping in view the context in which it operates. Consider the use of specific raw materials which are used in your organization and how these raw materials are converted into the finished products and services, the specific products or services your organization produces which are regulated, for example some chemicals, and the health and safety of all stakeholders. Let's see what can be the suitable evidence to demonstrate your competence. Legal register, which shows all the legal requirements applicable on your organization related to health and safety, your organization's risk profile from the legal requirement perspective, regulatory audit reports, legal requirements compliance procedure, your organization's legal compliance status from inspection or audit results, that is how effective is your legal compliance for health and safety. 1.5 Identify those external to the organization who may be affected by its activities. To demonstrate your competence against this assessment criterion, you have to submit evidence that you have identified what are the interested parties external to your organization who can or perceived to be affected by the OHS performance of your organization. External interested parties could be neighbors, community, customers, suppliers, insurance companies, contractors, regulatory bodies, employer association, media, members of the public, NGOs, etc. Let's see what can be the suitable evidence which you can provide. List of external interested parties which has been established by your organization. Feedback or complaints from the external interested parties. Scope of OHS management system if it includes the external interested parties and their relevant requirements. In the second learning outcome, there are total 6 assessment criteria. We shall discuss each criterion in detail, so you should know what each assessment criterion means and how you can demonstrate your competence against each. 2.1 Identify deficiencies in the current health and safety policy. To demonstrate your competence against this assessment criterion, you have to submit evidence that you can review if your organization's OHS policy is meeting the expectations of all stakeholders. If yes, how, and if not, why not. To demonstrate the evidence of your competence, you can submit your organization's OHS policy and your comments that how it is able to achieve the health and safety performance and what are the opportunities for improvement which can be exploited. 2.2 is identify resource constraints that could affect proposals for change. Constraints mean limitations. To demonstrate your competence against this assessment criterion, you have to submit evidence that you have identified the costly OHS processes which may affect the proposal for intended change. This may include the training requirements, purchase of engineering controls, personal protective equipment purchase, etc. To demonstrate your competence, you can submit minutes of the management review meeting which may show the deployment of resources to improve the OHS performance, records of non-conformities due to the lack of suitable resources, results of risk assessment showing the lack of resources for the control measures. 2.3 Provide opportunities for key stakeholders to review the revised or new policy. To demonstrate your competence against this criterion, you have to submit evidence that you review your organization's OHS policy in consultation with relevant stakeholders to ensure it is serving its intended purpose. To demonstrate your competence for this criterion, you can submit the evidence, the organization's OHS policy's review procedure, minutes of the OHS policy review meeting. 2.4 Revise the health and safety policy to remedy deficiency. To demonstrate your competence, you have to submit evidence that you can revise the OHS policy when it has the deficiencies. You can provide the previous and revised OHS policies along with the justification for the changes, minutes of the OHS policy review meetings in case your organization decided to maintain the same OHS policy after its review. 2.5 is to formulate the strategy for promoting commitment to the health and safety policy by all those in the organization. You have to submit evidence that you can devise a strategy to promote commitment to the goals established in the health and safety policy by all those in the organization. The relevant evidence can be the records of workers' involvement and consultation, any safety campaigns you initiated, notice board posters or pictures, records of training and toolbox talks in which the promotion of commitment to the health and safety policy was emphasized and communicated, records of any OHS meetings conducted to reiterate the requirements of commitment to health and safety policy. 2.6 is advocate the adoption of the new or improved health and safety policy. You have to submit the evidence that you can communicate the revised OHS policy to various stakeholders in your organization to ensure they understand their role in achieving the OHS policy goals. Your submitted evidence for assessment criterion 1.2 shall also be sufficient to demonstrate your competence for this assessment criterion 2. There are two assessment criteria in the third learning outcome. Let's discuss each assessment criterion. The assessment criterion 3.1 of Unit 2 is being displayed on your screen. To demonstrate your competence against this assessment criterion, you have to submit evidence that you devised a strategy to effectively implement the health and safety policy in your organization, keeping in view the support and assistance needed by employees, supervisors and managers, etc. And you foresee risks which may disrupt effective implementation and you plan to address those risks. Let's discuss what can be the suitable evidence. To demonstrate your competence, you can submit health and safety policy implementation procedure for your organization, letters, emails from within the organization about any issues they may face while implementing health and safety policy and your response to them, letters, emails sent internally by you for effective implementation of health and safety policy. In these communication, the evidence shows that you have provided them advice and support. You conducted the training to implement health and safety policy. you initiated a mass awareness campaign in order to make awareness about the health and safety policy and how it is relevant to them. 3.2 is ensure quality management requirements are applied to all health and safety documentation. To demonstrate your competence against this criterion, you have to submit evidence that health and safety documentations are effectively controlled against the risk of number 1, loss of integrity, risk of presence of obsolete documents, risk of lack of traceability, risk of unavailability at the point of use, etc. You can submit the following evidence to prove your competence. Document control procedures for your organization, the inspection or audit results for the documentation, the inspection or audit results for the documentation which specify suitable inspection criteria. This can be against clause 7.5 of ISO 45001-2018. There are 5 assessment criteria in the 4th learning outcome. Let's discuss each assessment criterion. Explain the nature and role of the health and safety policy within the organization. You have to provide the written response to demonstrate your competence for this criterion. Consider the following while responding your answer. What are the contents of health and safety policy and what purpose does it serve for the OHS performance of the organization? Your response must be limited between 250 to 350 words. Note, you can reference ISO 45001-2018 clause 5.2 or any other suitable criteria to establish the contents of health and safety policy. 4.2. Explain the input, conversion, output model, that is ICO model of organizational system. You have to provide the written response which must be between 250 to 350 words. 4.3. Describe how to research the organization's current health and safety procedures. To meet the requirement of this assessment criterion, you have to provide your written response as follows. How do you measure the effectiveness and efficiency of health and safety procedures and identify any deficiencies? Consider inspections, audit, rehearsals, feedbacks, views of interested parties, and the management review meetings, etc. You must present your written response, which must be between 250 to 350 words. 4.4. Explain how individual and group motivation will be achieved. What different methods you may use to motivate the individuals and groups to achieve the OHS performance. Again, the response should be between 250 to 350 words. 4.5. Explain external factors influencing health and safety, for example, statutory health and safety requirements and industry best practices. To meet the requirements of this assessment criterion, you have to provide your written response as follows. Explain the external factors which have the potential to influence your organization's OHS management system in either positive or negative way. Consider legal requirements, client requirements, economic and political stability, business competition, availability of skilled manpower, availability of engineering controls, availability of raw materials, etc. The response must be between 250 to 350 words. The 5th learning outcome relates to your continuing professional development. You must use the relevant form. Download this form from the resource section and complete it as you have completed in the previous unit. So far, you all must have known how NVQ qualifications are different than other qualifications, right? In NVQ qualifications, you have to submit the evidence of your competence. But what is the suitable evidence keeping in view your workplace and its context? For your understanding, just assume that a health and safety auditor is visiting your workplace and asking you to provide the evidence of the conformity. The evidence you will present to that auditor will also be valid to demonstrate your competence for NVQ qualifications. So imagine the auditor is asking the following questions from you. What documents, records or other evidence you will present them? Each question being displayed on your screen represents the relevant assessment criteria. If the auditor asks you how does health and safety functions in your organization, then what will be your response and what documentary evidence will you present to them to explain your answer. Similarly, if the auditor asks you, how do you communicate the importance of health and safety policy to all stakeholders? What will be your response and what documentary evidence will you present to them to support your response? How do you assess the OHS system, policies and procedures if they are effective and efficient or not? How do you evaluate what legal requirements are applicable on your workplace? 1.5. How do you identify the external interested parties which can or perceived to be affected by health and safety performance of your organization? How do you identify the deficiencies in your health and safety policy? 2.2. How do you identify which OHS processes shall create resources shortage or resource limitations and thus the proposed change shall not likely be achieved? How do you provide the key stakeholders an opportunity to review health and safety policy? Do you revise the health and safety policy to improve and remove deficiency? How do you promote the requirements of commitment to health and safety policy by all? How do you ensure that revised health and safety policy is effectively adopted by all? How do you effectively implement health and safety policy so everyone understands their role in achieving what is expected from them? How do you ensure that your documentation meets the quality management requirements in terms of traceability, update, revision, misuse of obsolete documents, integrity, theft, destruction, etc.? Remember, when you show the evidence to the auditor, you will also brief him the context of the submitted evidence and explain to him so the presented evidence makes more sense. Similarly, you have to write the same explanation as the narrative of your submitted evidence to the assessor so the assessor is able to understand your role and the effectiveness of the evidence against the requirements of relevant assessment criterion. For all assessment criterion from 4.1 to 4.5, you have to demonstrate your understanding by providing the written response in your own words. The response must, however, be between 250 to 350 words against each assessment criterion.